to have his vibe on the album, and it was just like, dude, I'm so happy to have you on it. So it makes that's the thing. It's like, what Cook's feeling and Taggart. I bring the story, the arrangements, the lyrics, but even with Tobias, he's like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, what are you hearing, bro? Like, what's that following that process, even through the writing of it, is a big part of it as well. It's like, well, you start off with this initial idea, it's a tough cookie to crack, but I hope I don't quit. And how does that evolve, even like lyrically? It's almost the same thing with how the tune pulls you through musically. It's like, well, it's kind of asking for something, and here's what it's saying. Mike, Jack, and I are always coming to these little epiphanies inside of the recording process, where it's like, and then all of a sudden, click, 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 bang, 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 and we're like, working on stuff, and it's just like, that's why, and that's what makes it exciting to write the stuff, to record the stuff, to play the stuff. It's all sort of seemingly there already in a weird way,
Well, it's nice. I mean, we've talked a little bit about your songwriting process a few years back, but we're more or less kind of going those same lines. I know it hasn't changed too much for you because you just kind of pretty much gave me it all without me actually having to ask a question, which is fine, mind you. So I'm not complaining about that. But it just like what I like about your process is even though you're bringing the kind of show song, you're so in tune to what other people could possibly bring to the table, And I mean, not all musicians are like that. I'm not. That's what I'm saying. A small portion. Hear me out here. Small portion can be a little bit narrow-minded and are not as willing to take in different opinions on something they've written, and it even makes it in that case makes it difficult working with a producer or an engineer, because if you're going to keep butting heads, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, right, and that's where I think there's always a sense of give and take with everything. Okay, here's the baseline for what it is, but at a certain point, I'm okay with like saying, Mike, well, what do you think? Like where it's at? Like, and he'd be like, it's cool, everything is all right. Like without me disappearing, with my head up my rear end about anything. And so it is for me very organic, and I like that because it's just like cross pollination of things. Not everybody's comfortable with it, but a lot of cats I know that I'm lucky to know, like Chris, like Cook, like Tobias, like Michelle, Xander, other people. They're listening like for the music, and that's the thing. I think like Chris and I played enough jazz music together that a big part of playing improvisational music is not just you soloing. The big aspect of it is the support mechanism and how you're listening and how it then evolves. So I have a lot of trust in people when it comes to that, and I guess the decision making process through it all is a big part of it. So.
No, fair enough, and but it's nice to hear, because I have some buddies like your friends. I don't get back to Montreal, unfortunately, often enough because that's where I was born and raised. But I got three buddies. Two of them, one of them more so than the other two, he's just one of those guys. Picks up an instrument and away he goes. He's just literally a natural musician. And it's frustrating sometimes, but it's really fun to play with them because you learn so much. I mean, that's how you learn. You still learn off each other, right? And my other buddy, he's a drummer and a guitarist, so he can go back and forth. And then their buddies mainly guitar and vocals. But it was, like I said, growing up and playing with them, because we played in the same bands, we played in different bands, and now they're still doing the band scene in Montreal. And it was, like I said, it was fun, but very frustrating. And one of the guys I haven't talked to in a long time, and I honestly don't even know where he is at this point, unfortunately. But a guy I grew up with my age, I'll never forget his name. His name was Morgan Moore. And Ed, this guy was the most insane bassist you ever met in your life. Like 16, at 16, he was giving bass lessons.
Sounds like a prodigy.
Yeah, pretty much, So if I could find him someday and say hi to him again, I would love to, because he was...
Google him. See if he's out playing. I mean, if he was that addicted to it back then, he's probably still got the bug today. Yeah,
because and he's one of those guys too, that super nice guy. Wasn't that not a bean bone on his body, and one more quick sidetrack here, just because I'm mentioning him, because I'll never forget this. Because I met Morgan when I believe it was 8 or 9, when we were Cub Scouts. So we're getting on a bus to go on a weekend camping trip, and his mom gets maybe 2 feet from the bus, and he starts crying. He's like, "I want to go home." The bus hasn't even left or even started up yet, right? So she comes back in and takes him away, and that was my first encounter with Morgan.
Well, yeah, those little things stick. I mean, when you're a kid, things are so different. Your environment, leaving home, what's going to happen? Mom and dad, what, right?
Exactly.
But your statement is true to form, my friend, when you're talking about the humility inside of that, because, I've met some really, amazing people, and they're always, inclined to talk to you, answer questions. Dizzy Gillespie was that way. Mingus was that way. They're sharing it is just like you said. It's learning from others. And there were kids in my neighborhood that were older than me that gave me my first experiences of the, over the garage jam, playing with older cats,
Right.
So it was like, it was all so exciting, and having that is one of the biggest things. I mean, like, yeah, you go to lessons, you practice on your own, but sometimes having that, community acceptance is also a big part of it, even if you're not like totally proficient yet, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I still play, but it's at this point in time, I guess it's been a hobby, and I haven't been playing tons, not as much as I wanted to, but I still get to it. But the nice part is those guys aside, I still have really good close musician friends, which I can send the song to and get their feedback. And pretty much, I tell them, be as blunt as you want. Let me know. Let me have it. Where did it go wrong? Where can I improve? And they get all this feedback, and it's so nice because like, okay, I can work with this. I can work with this, and it's like I said. It's frustrating at first because you're thinking like, oh, why? But then you kind of see it in different ways. Like, okay, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense now. Just like when you're putting the songs together, right? Like when you're making Tough Cookies, like, oh, that kind of fits in there. I didn't think about that before.
Right, exactly, and that that but at the same time too, there becomes what you call a critical mass, where if everything is finished and put together, it's like, well, it's kind of hard to change everything now. But yeah. That's the thing. It's like even when I'm playing by myself or with a band, I mean, I always allow that envelope to be there for anything can happen, whether it's extended solo or breakdown, just living in the moment with the music or performing it differently than you hear it on the record. Not like, but like, unless electric is now acoustic version of.
Right.
But that's, I think, too, a telltale sign of a good tune, that whether it's done with a band or you're just doing it on a piano or an acoustic by yourself, man, just a voice singing the message, that, holds true. It becomes that, like, okay, it's a good tune no matter how you play it or what you do with it.
And on that note, Ed, do you switch up a lot during shows, make an electric and acoustic or an acoustic and electric?
Yeah, I'm doing that on my own a lot. Like, by myself when I'm doing solo shows, it's usually an electric rig that I have for my bass and a whole bunch of pedals, from a loop station to, different kind of drive. I got a reverb, a whole bunch of different things that I use, a synth pedal that I use sometimes. And then at the same time, I've got my acoustic set up, and I can either build things on the spot. I also have things that are like, certain instruments that are out mixes of things that I can play along to, or I just do the tunes as they are. A lot of times what I like to do, and what I'm finding is really interesting, is playing the electric bass and just singing without anything in the background, chordally, rhythmically, and putting together that as almost this kind of like electric folk bass player
right.
kind of thing. And I remember in New York when I was playing there, it was like, man, people were like really digging it, just like as it is, bare bones, if you will, Dr. Bones. And it's like, it feels good. It doesn't make me feel naked because there's not a kit behind me or a guitar player or keyboardist or something.
Right.
It feels right. And I feel comfortable with that hunk of wood around my neck. I mean, that's what I started playing, was the bass. But I dabble, I go back and forth, and arranging and stuff like that. I love using my acoustic for that kind of stuff.
Now, as far as the arrangements go and a lot of songs, this is kind of a mixed question, so let me split it up here to make it sound more sense, because it sounded good in my head at the moment, but it's not going to make any sense coming out. So starting off with recording, like laying down the tracks, just back to the songwriting process for just a moment. When you're putting down the shell of the song, you're singing around, getting it done. When you bring it to them, do you already have a lot of it tracked already, or is it just kind of like, is it like a kind of bare shell?
Well, you know what? No, it's like I go in with Mike, and whether I've written the tune on the bass or the drum kit or the acoustic guitar or the keyboard, Rhodes, the Hammond,
right.
I kind of use that as the template. Often it's the acoustic because I find that the acoustic is readily available all the time, even in the middle of the night, and I don't have to turn anything on, and I can sit on my porch, sit outside, sit on the couch, doesn't matter where it is, it's there. So, and then, I'm like, work. I mean, when Mike and I come here, it's like, yeah, we have coffee for half an hour, 40 minutes, but then we're up in Area 51 for close to 8 or 9 hours doing what we're doing, and I'm like, well, this is ready. I want to kind of track it. So it's provided that we have all those beds and ghosts, or in some cases, I build an entire tune from beginning to end and all the instrumentation. That's like, again, following that process, and what I'm feeling needs to be there, and experiencing it as well. Like, other instrumentation and playing with those ideas then sort of translates also to the thinking process about arranging. So you can't help but not, and I can't help but not, create scratch tracks, then sit behind other instruments and try to play parts. And before I know it, I'm like, hey, you know what? I really want to try to do this. But then, like I said, with Cook and Taggart, it's like, well, no, we came in and did 5 overdubs off of 5 different tracks. And then with Dave and I and Mike, it was a different studio that was down in Toronto. And, then a lot of tracks were sent out, Germany,
right.
Toronto, Pittsburgh. So, it was kind of like piecing it all together. But somehow for me, that's a big part of it. Like, I like doing the live off the floor stuff, and a lot of that stuff is trying to find my groove.
Right.
Is that way. But, I never try to put a boundary on it, just like the writing process. It's like, well, kind of, here's what's happening, so let's go with it,
So it's easy, then it makes it a little bit easier to go back to if you think it's not finished?
Well, kind of, but at the same time, it's like, there's that point where, like, when you're writing a tune and the lyrics and all the imagery and the emotions and color of the chords and what you're doing have kind of come to this final head, and you have this subtle realization, like, okay, here's the husk. And because of all of those cosmetics, it's kind of saying, hey, you know what, acoustic bass, jazz guitar, maybe some soup on the kit, and maybe we should approach this like a jazz number, just because even the way that the message is making me sing it, all of that is part of what dictates it. So, and like I said, it's never like, Mike and I say, our method is not to have a method.
Right. So in a sense, it kind of turns into a jam then, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, in a way.
We'll say an organized jam. We'll put it that way.
An organized jam, but not, because like even with Tough Cookie or Red Omen, those numbers, after tracking the Ghost, we did a bunch of rehearsals with it pumping out of a PA system and playing along to like there was a 4th member of the band. So when the actual session happened, we were ready to go, and it was like, well, that's just a 4th member, and we're cutting the track.
Right on. That's very cool. I really enjoy the way you do that, and like I said, it just gives you that much more of an open mind. And I tell you, reminds me, I have a uncle and some some cousins in Pennsylvania.
Cool.
And I was there in last July for a wedding, and my uncle plays guitar. He's been playing guitar for a number of years, and he's a bit of a penny pincher, but he spends the money he wants on his guitars, which is always cool because he's got quite the collection. Let me tell you, I wish I had his collection.
He's just a guitarophile. He's not a penny pincher.
Pretty much, and my cousin Jordan plays bass. So when we were there for the wedding, the reception was after. So we went back to their place. So Jordan and I were jamming downstairs, and then he came down. And he's like, what's that tune? Because this is something I did kind of just wrote not too long ago. Goes, okay, well, so let's start from the top again. Let's start again. And then before we knew it, they're doing fill-ins, stuff like that. And we were starting to record it. And fortunately, didn't have time to kind of finish it up. So it's yet a song unfinished, but it was fun. And just kind of, they were following my lead, and I kind of switched around and started following their lead. and what a difference it makes. And it just so I'm very envious of you that you get to do this on a semi-regular basis.
But you know what? That's it, Brian. Because okay, like